Asia Virtual Roundtable, key takeouts from the Asia Leadership Retreat that we held in November at the Capella in Singapore. So yeah, my name is Mark Barber, Director of Content at Critical Eye, and it's really just a short session to run through some slides with key points from the retreat. Delighted to have our board mentor as well, Benny Go, with us, who attended the retreat. And after I've run through the slides, Benny, I'll come to you for some thoughts as well about what stood out for you during the retreat. And I have my two colleagues as well, Michael Crompton, General Manager for Asia, who you'll know, and Holly Carmichael, Head of Research and Market Development for APAC, and they'll share some thoughts too. Look, it'd be great to try and make this conversational. So great to hear any of your thoughts when I do finish running through the slides on some of those points that I'll run through. And also from my side, any ideas that you might have about what you'd like to see in 2025. And then we can feed that into our physical and virtual events program for our members. So I'll start now. And look, the format will be economic and geopolitical outlook. We held this just after the US election, right? So as you can imagine, geopolitics was very much front of mind, and I would say remains so. We'd talk a little bit about technology. Clearly, there tends to be a focus on Gen AI, and then we look at leadership capability. If we come to the next slide, you'll see why we're sort of focusing on those three areas. So if you've attended one of our retreats, you know that we do word clouds. Just sort of cherry picked the most popular answers from the word clouds that we held. So use one word to describe your business outlook for the next 12 months. Challenging, optimistic, growth, exciting, uncertainty. I suppose for me, I just contrast that when we hold this, say, at our CFO retreat in the UK or our CEO retreat in the UK. There's a lot more caution. I think there's a lot more retrenchment. There isn't that focus on how do you need to try and pivot to get the real opportunities for growth that are out there. So I'd say that's quite positive overall. And then use one word to describe the biggest risk for your business. And I think that's where we get into the three core areas where you've got talent, and I'll connect that with leadership capability. So the people agenda is absolutely front of mind, geopolitics, and then technology. And here you can see people are talking about the concerns about falling behind on AI and basically not moving at the pace that they need to around this. So that's a sort of bit of a flavour of where people's minds were in the room. And then I'll come on to the first area that we discussed. If we could have the next slide, please. So this is a big one, economic and geopolitical outlook. I think the anxiety about Trump 2.0 was very clear in the room, and the concerns over the impact of tariffs and what that means. There was a question that was asked in the room about what happens if countries in the region are forced to choose a side. And I think that also applies to what it means for companies as well. So this polarization that we're seeing and the acceleration of that potentially under Trump 2.0. Again, there was this real sense of, okay, so what does it mean for us? Clearly, it's difficult to have any firm answers on that, but one of the sort of responses from the economists that we had was, look, we got through Trump 1.0, and let's wait and see. But what the economists did say is that there absolutely will be a continuation of trade rerouting and this policy of what's now become the normalized idea of China +1. Interestingly, it was said the biggest proponent of China plus one comes from Chinese companies, and this trend is only set to continue. It was talked about how this is having a huge impact on the competitive landscape, and I thought rather boldly it said it's bigger than anything seen under Western MNCs. So it's a real shift you're seeing across, say, Southeast Asia. And it's Chinese companies coming in with their IP and know-how. And then to quote, it's in a manner more profound than anything we've seen with Western companies and subsidiaries. Um, so this is a real change that's not necessarily new, but certainly it's an acceleration and something that we'll see going forward. It was felt that there'll be no change in China's major shift from being a real estate-driven economy to a focus on domestic consumption and advanced innovation. Clearly, there are the challenges with the Chinese economy at present. But moving into the sort of the nub of the sort of economists' outlook, he absolutely expected increasing investment in Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, and gave an example around the ICT boom in Malaysia. And he talked about, so if you look at ICT related investments in 2018 and 2019, you'll find zero investment. Roll that on to 2023, and he quoted the figures of 80 billion RMB and 20 billion US dollars. He said it's a curve that will make NVIDIA look modest. So, from his perspective, he was saying this is Southeast Asia's time. There's a good but not perfect banking sector. He claimed that there's low debt levels at the public sector level, and the region is in a prime position to take advantage in a world where, again, if you sort of flip to Europe, there's a lot of insularity. There's a lot of retrenchment. There's a lot of inward looking, localized politics, which is slowing down decision making. So he was very much taking the glass half full position. However, there clearly are challenges. So he mentioned too much FDI coming into Singapore, and probably more alarmingly, the potential for a currency crisis within the region in 2025 if we do see large tariffs coming through. He said that you could basically see a big global FX sell off. It was asked whether this could create a crisis in the manner of what we saw in 97. He thought not, it's unlikely because we're not at the same inflection point of overvalued exchange rates. Inflation will continue to be an issue. But like I say, he did acknowledge these problems, but taking a longer term view, he was much more optimistic. I want to just quickly come to the last point as well, because I thought it was interesting. We didn't get into it in enough detail, but in the wrap-up interview, which was absolutely fabulous, the speaker talked about how the Indian Ocean is set to become a key region for resources, trade, and energy security in the coming years. And what was of interest to him was potentially seeing a much closer alliance between the US and India as the tensions ramp up with China. Again, not a personal opinion, but I thought it was interesting to be discussed and talked about. These charts are taken from our Asia leadership research, which we'll send to you post this video call. What do I take from that? I think you have more people expressing confidence in the rate of growth across the APAC economic region. But looking at both charts, I think there's a lot of caution still. I think we've got over the past year of elections and that uncertainty. So hopefully that creates more a clearer path going forward. But I think there's still a lot of volatility out there that people are aware of. So they were some points from the economic outlook and the wrap up session. If we come to the next slide. We run a series of polls across the retreat. What would I say about the first poll regarding capital structures? I was just about to interview a turnaround expert um, at the retreat when this poll was put up, and we had a sort of side conversation, and he was surprised by the number of people in the room that had said yes, they are concerned. He thought that was high, and it's indicative of more companies having cash flow issues and balance sheet concerns. So again, it's an indicator, but that stood out for him. I'd say the second poll again. I don't want to make too much of these polls, but I'd say the alignment is lower than it has been historically, which is reflective of I think of a lot of the restructuring that companies are going through. And then the third slide, again, this confirms what we're talking about, where it's skills and talent, leadership capability, and tech that are the big areas that execs are focusing on at present. Hopefully, you can see that, um, Kai. But yeah, we can send some of this to you afterwards. So yeah, I'm having to squint a little bit as well, so apologies. Um, but I suppose if we just come on to the next slide. Um, I would urge you to scan that QR code there for our podcast with Fei Shi and her the interview that Coco did, who's on this call as well. Sorry, Coco, I should have mentioned you earlier on how AI is reshaping the future of leadership. It's absolutely fascinating and really gets into some of the detail that I know you'll be keen to hear. But like when we discussed technology at the retreat, fundamentally it was about how do companies need to restructure um, in order to really use this tech to advance their strategy. For me, two things stood out. Right, one is the conversation around governance of this technology, which I think will be a bigger issue in 2025. Um, Specifically related to Gen AI, but I think the view was that it's too fragmented at present. I think it's going to be a more fundamental conversation about what do we actually mean by good governance when it comes to this technology. And I think it's this idea of good for whom. Um, with that, you've then also got this idea of the need for speed and flatter structures, and this idea of being more entrepreneurial and breaking down of organizational boundaries. This was challenged in the room by some execs because I think it really does vary by sector. In a tech company, you can talk about a flat architecture, but in other industries, it just isn't going to be appropriate. So there was pushback. However, the view was that if you're going to create this entrepreneurial attitude, you need to move people around. You need to switch C-suite roles just to try and get that pace and understanding of how technology can drive the overall business. Again, it was challenged, but I think you've got this real tension between governance and speed that around tech that companies will be grappling with. In terms of some examples of what companies are doing, it was mentioned that in MNCs, steps are being taken to decouple the new tech from the old to stop organizations getting stuck around issues around, say, quality of data and clean data. There's increasingly a move away from companies wanting to create tech themselves, so bespoke technology, and more adoption of tech because it's faster. Look, I know as well this will vary by sector, and if you're more highly regulated, some of the risks this pose. But again, it was some of the trend lines that were discussed. But like I say, I think just one final point on this: real pressure on boards to try and get over some of the skills gaps around this and the knowledge gaps. And this idea of, are they asking the right questions? I think if governance is a bigger issue, there's going to be more pressure on boards to get this right. But also that point around falling behind, are companies as fast on this as they need to be? So not easy, but I think that sort of onus on the independent director and the chair to try and be on top of this as well will increase in 2025. So some thoughts there, but please do listen to that podcast because I think you'll find real value in it. Okay, and final slide. Leadership capability. So again, in our research, you'll see that this is the number one priority for execs and INEDs over the next 12 months. It'll always feature highly when we conduct our research, but I think it's interesting that it was mentioned so often. And I think just as a bit of a scene setter, I'll give a little bit of colour to this as well. So one of the speakers talked about currently having to lay off 70% of their global workforce, which in part was driven by the impact of AI on their sector. And then they made this comment, which stood out for me. We need to continuously innovate as our products have to get faster. They have to be more sustainable and secure. So we're restructuring and looking at how to build capability in-house and where we might need to buy in through acquisitions. And I think this idea also of having to divest to invest is a big issue that's playing through in a lot of companies. It is. It is. There's no doubt. It is challenging. In terms of what are some of the support structures that companies are putting in place. So, from speaking to CPOs and CHROs for this event, there was a lot of conversation around improving adaptability, curiosity, a growth mindset. Mentioned a lot of individuals talked about this on the prep calls. Trying to build that out, the point was made about getting employees to work across organizational boundaries and to work with others. I think it's this idea of trying to move managers into leaders as well, and giving them the experience and exposure working out in other countries and other regions too. However, they all acknowledged it's not easy and it's very much a work in progress. And there you've got the point that the skills gap is more evident today than ever. We're falling behind as budgets are being slashed in crucial areas. There was just one other point where someone was talking about where you're restructuring. You realise that you've lost some real capability and knowledge within the business. So you've cut too hard and too deep. So I think there's a learning process that's going on here too. And the point that was made around is this need for a global mindset as companies within the region are looking to expand into, say, North America or EMEA or wherever it may be. How do you build that sort of global capability? And again, I think that will play through in our events and some of our sessions in 2025. So it's a bit of a whirlwind tour, and I appreciate I'm skipping over some highly complex things there, but hopefully that gives you a sense of what was on the minds of the attendees and what they wanted to discuss and share their thoughts on during the retreat last November. So I'll pause there, and then Benny, if I could look to bring you in, because you attended the retreat, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, and as an independent director, as a former exec who's worked in some huge organisations, just some thoughts from yourself about what stood out.
Thanks, Mark. I think your summary was very apt. My observation is this. I mean, this is one of the fewer retreats which really invigorated the audience, in particular, the subject matter and also the topics that were being discussed. The reason is this, right? Because Trump 2.0 is just around the corner. And while, as you said, in ASEAN or in Asia, there's a somewhat minor exuberance that the action is going to be shifted down to this side. But we all know that when elephants fight or when they make love, the grass suffer. So we in Asia are also going to be part of this whole decoupling process, and that's going to be tough. So that's one area which I think people are getting a bit more concerned about. While in November, I think it was still a bit of optimism. I've spoken to a few people along the way, and that seems to be the general trend that next week Trump is going to be on board.
Yeah.
You can see that things are rapidly moving in a very dramatic manner. So it's more of the same, but I think greater intensity. Uh, Leaving that, I think that issue on AI and technology, I think that's something which is uh, very important because, as you said, I think the boards today are not AI savvy.
Mm,
Right? Many boards today, in fact, management as well, right? We don't really understand AI because AI come as a tsunami. But only about 18 months ago, ChatGPT came online, and now everything has been smarter, faster, and it can erode a lot of the jobs. So the question becomes, how do boards manage that? How do management and leadership embrace that, right? As you said, in governance, but also in a way they restructure the organization.
yeah,
But was you said customer centric, yes, but how do you look at the markets today, given AI? How do you look at the new organization, and how does that affect the talent below? The usual talent that we need, are they going to be marginalized? Are they going to be removed? Or how do we ensure that the existing workforce continue to have their jobs and help the company? Right? I think that's a fundamental question that people are asking. So there might be future topics for our.
I'd like to get more into the
I think that's
detail
quite important. Yes.
of that in our sessions, and how companies are trying to get on it because I think they're talking about it, but now it's. I mean, you're seeing that when the example I gave of the company that's laying off 7% of its workforce. Some of that will be share price pressure, um, of course, but then I think strategically they realise they need to shift. Okay, but that for you was an interesting area. Was there anything else, Benny, that from your side?
Those are two broad areas, and I think the rest is really the ability to network with the different people. I think we are getting more local participants as well,
Yeah,
from local companies in Singapore. I think that's helpful.
yeah. Okay, okay. Anything you took personally from it, Benny, in terms of?
Uh, in the area of AI, actually, it's really quite something I've been doing a lot of research in. I find that most of the people I speak to, we are not ready to embrace it totally, right? We don't really understand how it is. But do we have a chief AI officer in future, or do you have a CTO that still does the same job? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Um, did anyone else want to come in with a question or observation based on what was said, what Benny said there, or anything else from the presentation?
Just yeah, Mark, it's Gary Selby here.
Hi, Gary.
Hi, yeah, I mean, interested in Benny's comments about, a lack of AI savvy amongst management teams and boards, and I know there's also, for I think even before AI, there was a push for more diversity on the board, including including age diversity, including trying to get some younger minds and younger opinions on the board. And I think that's probably even more important now, in light of digitalization and the rapid onset of AI. But I just sense, I mean, in my industry anyway, there's a general reluctance from the establishment and even from the shareholders to bring in, a 30 something kid who happens to be a whiz on AI or blockchain or whatever. I'm wondering, are we seeing, is a different option to actually just increase the board size? So rather than replacing, the old grey-haired experienced guys with young kids, are we looking at maybe uh, increasing the size of the board, having more people on the board with a broader mixture of experience and knowledge? Are we seeing that in any sectors?
Gary, maybe my quick take is that I think the board, with the current composition, I think requires a lot more education. And I don't see them anytime soon getting in a 30-year-old or whiskey to be on the board. But I think they'll engage a lot more board advisors in this area for their own knowledge before going into that area, as you mentioned.
We talked about this yesterday in the session that we run in our Chair Ready program, and yeah, I think to Benny's point, not necessarily putting someone officially on the board, but maybe creating a subcommittee, like within the sort of brings in different perspectives, different experiences that then feeds into the board. Can be a way to do it. I don't know, Hendrik, Kai, Jagdish, do you have a view on this at all? Anything that you've seen?
Yeah, I think there's a more general point about how a lot of technology is developing here and becoming part of businesses. I mean, really, people doing sort of more or less conventional jobs increasingly are confronted with new technologies that enable them to perform better, that maybe change the way they need to work, that that result in real changes in the business models and business structures of entities. And the only way to really react to this stuff and to get on top of it is for actually people to become much more tech savvy at the board level, at the governance level, and management level, and throughout the organization. So it no longer works to say, oh, here's this new AI. It's a computer related thing. We'll have the the digitalization team, the tech people take care of it, and then everything will be fine. No, actually, the whole organization needs to be involved and to make leadership decisions about this sort of thing. Yes, the board also needs to get informed. It's kind of more of a direct issue with AI than we've even seen before, because suddenly you have AI challenging white collar jobs, and until now it's mostly been new tech comes along and it's the blue collar people who have to adapt or something, but now it's the white collar people who are challenged, and really entire organizations need to either become tech savvy and learn how to do this stuff, and work together with the tech people and learn, or it's a slow death.
That point was made in the keynote. Actually, we had a keynote from Accenture, and yeah, that definitely echoes what was being described, and it's really on executives to keep learning as well, but it applies to the non-execs as well. Jagdish, you must have a view on this. Can I bring you in?
Yeah, Mark. So, Mark, I think we this issue was, I mean, it came out in your deck as well. There's a huge issue with the talent part, right? I think the way the how fast the field is evolving, and I mean, devolving that knowledge, right down to the partners and then to the organizations and building those skills. I mean, it's a big challenge out there, right? I think what I see happening is that the market is primarily, I mean, all the hype that we are hearing about it. Yes, it's not just a hype, but there's a lot of it which is being driven by the consulting organizations,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Not very untrue. From where I kind of sit and talk with people, what I do see is that there are some big challenges. One of them is AI learns from the data you feed to it, right? So I see a disconnect where you have to feed your entire. I mean, if you have to really leverage AI for your organization, something needs to be done. Your information needs to be organized. It needs to be updated. Whatever is not required has to be archived, etc. There's a lot of that you need to do in your organization. Plus, then you also have to figure out a way that while the AI does kind of give you the insights on that, by itself, it does not evolve using your proprietary information. There are ways and means which are happening. There are technologies which help you do that, but I do see a lot of skill and talent gap there.
Okay, okay. Are you seeing ways in which companies are trying to overcome that?
Sorry?
I just wondered, just to sort of throw you, I guess the exam question is like, how do you see companies trying to navigate this? I mean, there are no short-term fixes apart from, I guess, spending a lot of money to try and bring in people that everyone else wants. But yeah, I just wondered if you had any thoughts about what.
Absolutely. So um, so in my conversations with people, I think the only way to cut the hype and the FOMO, if you ask me, okay, the fear of missing out, is to actually take some actual use cases, right? Define a problem accurately, make sure that you have the data behind it, and then initiate some pilots and projects which help you solve a real business problem. Because while the potential is there, there are multiple breaking points when you start solving business problems with that. So that's the approach I see people taking up. And instead of general education to entire management team or to your people or to your IT people, it is more like, hey, pick up a problem which you can solve with AI, learn with it, share that knowledge, and that's how you build the organizational capability.
Hi, did you unmute because you were going to come in, or?
Yes, I can come in to the last two comments if you want.
I'd love you to, yes.
Okay. First one to Jagdish's comment. Finding use cases and then applying AI or other new tools. We made very good experiences with this. And I want to add even a very, very small problem that you can solve will educate a certain number of people and they will talk about it. Yeah, I have two examples just in front of my office here. Yeah, some accounting problem. We couldn't solve it for years. We didn't know how to basically program that stuff. And suddenly we were able with some, I even don't understand which AI tool they used, but they were able to program it. And they're proud and they're teaching each other. So this is very good. It can be very small. Yeah. And it has a ripple effect. Don't make the big program. That's at least what we have done so far. Of course, the train will come when we have to go get bigger, but we are not there yet in our organization. So it resonated, Jagdish. To the two speakers before, adding to the board young people or having a subcommittee, I want to give you another perspective or dimension. And just one word, sectoral diversity. I give you two examples. The biggest challenge in the last maybe 5 years that board members gave me was a tech issue. Yeah, I'm in charge of IT in our group. A tech and security topic. And it was brought up by a person well over in its 70s and not so much white hair left anymore. Okay, but he brought it from two cases that he experienced as an NED in the medical sector, and another one I don't want to quote, yeah, which might affect our company. I hadn't looked at this. I asked for half a year. After half a year, we had the program to tackle this. So sometimes it's another sector that you look at. They are looking at things. Another angle is not necessarily age or technology in that case. And the 70% headcount reduction rings a bell. Yeah. I've seen two cases here in Hong Kong where even more than 70% have gone. Out of 20 staff in an agency, they only have 2 left. And they do the same at a similar quality right now. Now, this is a specific sector, yeah, but this is good stuff to know and to share in the board. Tell other people about it. This is happening. What could that mean for us and for our people? So sectoral diversity and being able to learn. I come from an industry where we don't like that. We are car guys, so we know better what to do. This is another industry. We don't want to listen to it. Please leave the boardroom. This is the wrong attitude. Seen it too often. And sectoral diversity. I don't know. Maybe you have a better word, Mark, but that can help you a lot. Yeah, learning from other fields. So there's also beauty of such retreats to see and then to transfer yourself. So that would be my two cents. Can I add a question, Mark, to you or to the participants? A very short one.
No, please do. Yes, absolutely.
You mentioned one thing for the NEDs, get ready for AI challenges and geopolitical ones. But basically, AI was the one that you mentioned. Was there some other thing where participants said, this is a topic where as a NED, as an INET, I have to look at? Was there something coming up over and beyond that topic? Also fine if not, but
no. I mean,
asking.
probably for me, the one that we didn't get into was around sustainability.
Still there.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, when you look at the investment that China's putting into new energy, like it's off the chart, right? So I think probably I need to. Again, I need to think about a way that we can tackle that topic at the retreat in a way that it's very easy to fall into platitudes on sustainability. So for me, I'd like to try and break through that in the session for
okay.
the retreat.
Maybe Mark, one interesting thing in my research the other day, where our board was surprised. Look, we are a large organization with 28,000 people, but we are not listed. So certain things we do not have to do. Yeah, and ESG reporting is one of them. Of course, the banks pressurize you, and we do our good part. We do it relatively reasonably. But of course, there's always the one or the other member who says, "Oh, I so much," etc. You should look at Singapore. I think, if I'm correct, 2027 organizations that are not listed but are large enough, and the borderline is 1 billion Singapore dollar revenue, will have to do the same as listed organizations.
Huge.
My hypothesis for Hong Kong, that's where I'm based, a year later, at the latest, if not in the same year, Hong Kong will do the same, because you have this type of competition going on. Yeah, they don't want to be left behind. So different for Europe, different for the US, but in Asia, I think we will see this, and Japan has a similar trend. Could be interesting for your session. But this is not for today, just as an input. I found this interesting. Our board was very quiet after that comment. And they said, oh, okay.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Would anyone else like to come in? I mean, Benny, was there anything from your side?
No, but I echo the point about the sustainability reporting, right? That's really the one corner, as you said, and that really drives the industry. So it's a moot topic for our next retreat as well, because how the companies embrace that, especially when you are a sizable company, like I think a couple of $1 million, you need to report that, and so that spawns another industry, right? People who support the reporting and become consultants who help companies do the ESG reporting. So those are things that we can discuss as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, where I'm based, you're seeing a lot of the requirements around sustainability getting just rolled into the finance function, and it's now on the desk of the CFO, and I think it's because it's more material now for the business. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Jagdish, did you unmute? You wanted to come in?
Yeah. I think I'm unmuted. Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you nice and clearly.
Yeah. There was one question. So I'm also mentoring an organization, a startup in sustainability area, and one of the investors asked a very interesting question, which I think is good for this forum as well. And that question was, with Trump coming in, how do you see the ESG agenda? Is it going to get significantly diluted? I mean, are you still going to have the kind of focus that's being put by governments and enterprises? I mean, was there any discussion about it, the Trump effect on sustainability?
Yeah, yeah, there was, and the comment was made is that under Trump, that none of this will be material for APAC. It was quite a bold response. That China's contribution and investment is so profound that you're just going to see an acceleration of investment. I made a little note here. In 2023, China added 293 gigawatts in renewable energy. So that's solar, wind, and hydro, and a bit of nuclear. This addition last year was bigger than the entire US stock of green energy production, right? It's off the chart. So I think again, sort of that sort of medium to long term picture, it's kind of the die is cast. However, look, you're talking about a big region and lots of complexity within that. It's not just China. But I think I thought it was. I mean, it was quite a bold statement, and the view is that from where you guys are sitting, um, it's not necessarily going to have such a big impact. I don't know. It's a view that can be challenged, I think. But I thought it was an interesting response. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, can I add something on
Yeah,
that?
please do. I'm mindful of time. Well, we're meant to finish shortly, but I'd be really keen to get your comment, Hendrik. Yes.
Yeah. So about sustainability, I think in the US, certainly ESG is no longer a relevant word. You can't say it.
It's just been
But
weaponized, hasn't it? It's gone. Yeah. Yeah.
If you look at global trends in disclosures and in the way that companies think about sustainability, I would advise sort of referring to the concept of planetary boundaries. This is something that comes out of Stockholm. It's a much broader scope of sustainability that covers, things like ocean sustainability, land use, and pollution and so on. I mean, I think there will be a temporary period with Trump tamping down some areas of concern, but he can't stop physics. So this issue is definitely with us. So in that sense, I mean, China's investment in renewable energy domestically and also throughout Asia has an impact, but it doesn't cover all of the sustainability issues. And it's something that I actually think is connected to sustainability. It hasn't really come up in your reports of the discussions, but is a big concern in North Asia. Has to do with really corporate financial sustainability. There's a real issue of listed companies in Japan, in Korea, and some other places where the equity value is less than book value, where returns to shareholders are not sufficient. You see regulatory movement and stockholder rule movement pushing companies to perform better in terms of providing shareholder returns. That's a big piece of pressure, big concern on boards in a lot of Asian companies. And how do you better deploy your capital so that you're a sustainable business? So yeah, I would just suggest that's an
nice
area
one. Thank you.
to look at. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mindful of time, would anyone else like to come in? And Gary, I hope that answered your question, by the way. Sorry to come back to you rather lately, poorly chaired there by me, but hopefully that did give you the response that was helpful.
Yeah, it was good. Good discussion. Thanks.
Okay.
Mark, Michael here. I just quick. I've got things to say on everything everyone said. It's been really great to have the involvement here. Thanks for joining us at this session. I caught up with one of our members who's based in Brazil just over Christmas. He was in Hong Kong meeting some banks, and he was telling me about sort of some of the AI case studies they've got, which have huge impact on. It's basically pulp and paper, so they have the forestry and real business landscape changing sort of technology that they've been bringing in. And just starting into what might be a sensor here or a drone set of drones there and the data points. And just, I think if anyone wants to talk about case studies on AI and technology that have really shifted the needle in the business, I'd be very happy to put you in touch with him. And he can wax lyrical about that for a long time. So, but the piece around talent was really interesting. We heard quite a bit throughout the week of the retreat around efforts coming through from EDB, I think, and Temasek in particular about globalizing Singaporean talent. Or if the mountain won't come to Mohammed, then Mohammed goes to the mountain. So I've got that wrong way around. But trying to get global thinking into Singapore. Hong Kong has its own challenges or opportunities at the moment with talent and a shift in sort of perspective. So much came out of the day and a half, and we've just sort of condensed some of it here. But it's really interesting to see the comparison. I think, Mark, you were asking me about pop-up boards earlier around what we're seeing topics on restructuring has happened, and now it's technology sort of coming into play and what's been needed now that the restructuring has happened. But there's a lot around people and culture. And again, that was something I think that sat under quite a lot of the discussions I had at the retreat was culture and company culture, corporate culture. And in some cases, it's just it's a platitude and some words they put up on the wall in big letters. And in other cases, it's the DNA of the company and how they operate. So just really interesting, and thanks Mark and Benny for the sort of condensing some of that into some really powerful slides and comments there. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Michael. Holly, did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and echo Michael's sentiment there. I think it's been a really interesting discussion, so thank you all for your observations and questions as well. I think just building on the point that you made earlier, Mark, around leadership capability, I think it's interesting. You said a lot of cost is being taken out of businesses at the moment, right? So there's no doubt that leaders are being expected to do a lot more with a lot less resources, which is then putting a real focus on operational efficiency as well. But I think for me, the common thread running through every conversation that I had at the retreat and in meetings surrounding it as well was the incredibly fast pace of change that's happening and also the level of uncertainty. And there was an observation made by one of the speakers at the retreat that because of the level of uncertainty and the complex environment that we're operating in, the single biggest skill that leaders and their teams can have is managing that uncertainty. So I think leaders need to be really comfortable managing ambiguity at the moment. That's also then putting an emphasis on, I would say, a level of vulnerability and curiosity as well within leaders, which ties into the point that you made, Mark, around mindset. So I think there's two elements within the mindset piece. The first being the global mindset, which of course is relevant for businesses looking to expand. But I mean, a lot of our core work is around supporting succession structures and leaders looking to step up. And it's particularly relevant for that. And I think quite often that mindset shift is underestimated. I think the second point, and Hendrik, this comes up quite often in work that we do in Japan as well. But it's around the ability to learn and unlearn, not being afraid to say, I don't have the answer to this, and really embracing failure, because obviously the quicker you fail, the quicker you learn. So I'm conscious of time, I'll end there, but
No, that's great.
Observations that I picked up on.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Fabulous. There was a comment made at the retreat. We're all in the same storm. We're just weathering it differently. So, which I thought was a nice little turn of phrase. Listen, I'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for making the time for this session. I hope you found it useful. I certainly have. A big thank you to Benny Go as well. For joining and sort of kicking off and sharing some thoughts from the retreat as well. Thank you to all of you. We'll send a follow-up email. We'll send the research as well. If you have any questions, and also that if you do think there's a topic that you'd like to see us discussed, please let me know, because it certainly makes my job easier. But it's just like you'll be seeing things and you'll be much closer to things as well. So it's always valued to have that input. Well, listen, have a great day. And thanks again. I hope you've enjoyed this session.
Very much. Thanks,
Been
Mark.
great. Thanks.